All right. Well, thank you both for joining me. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you and hearing what you have to say.
We,
Um,
we're glad to be here. We are pleased that you
Mom, mom,
asked us.
mom, mom.
Okay.
all right. So my first question is pretty open-ended. It's just tell me about yourself. Uh, specifically your history in Taunton, but as well any history you have outside of it, and anything you feel like sharing, really.
All right. Well, I grew up in East Taunton, and I grew up and went to Caswell School, which is now a home for the assisted living home. And I went to school right across the street. I lived directly across the street from the elementary school. And in those days, believe it or not, my doctor, family doctor, lived right across the street next to the school. And if any of the family got sick, we called the doctor and he'd come right over with the bag. That's when doctors made
Hmm.
phone calls. And I went there for 5 years and then I got sick. I had asthma, and my mother and father, this is where I learned to be a good parent from them. My mother and father had to sell the house, beautiful house we had and a lot of land. And my father moved into a one-room apartment, and my mother took me to California because I had child-like asthma. And the
Hmm.
doctor said, keep them out there for 2 years. My mother did, and we came back to Taunton. And from there, to make a long story short, I went to St. Mary's Grammar School, which just closed, which is where St. Mary's Church is today.
Hmm.
I went to Coyle High School, which eventually became Coyle Cassidy High School. I graduated from Coyle Cassidy High School. I joined the United States Marine Corps, came home from the Marine Corps, and decided to go to college. I took one shot at it, didn't pay much attention to it because I had just come out of the Marine Corps. But during that time, I met a beautiful woman named Dianne Marie Levesque. And we got married, and Dianne Marie Levesque got a teaching job at Norton High School. She gave that up and went to California. She applied for different jobs out on the West Coast. She got a teaching job in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and and I applied to schools, and I went to New Mexico State University, and we stayed there. I graduated, came back, got a job at Canton High School, stayed there for 36 years, and had a nice family. And you are one of my favorite parts of that family. That's in for me right now.
Thank you very much.
Well, I don't know whether to start from the back and work my way front. Okay, I was born in Taunton, also in the local hospital, many, many years ago. And I had a nice childhood. We had a lot of land to play around on. We started school at St. Jake's French School in Whittington. So Whittington was a little close neighborhood, all French, except for those Irish that were impinging on our territory. Uh, we walked. I walked to school for 9 years because it was kindergarten also. And it was quite an upbringing. We didn't go far. We weren't East Taunton. I didn't even know existed. We did know where the Portuguese people lived because they had a bakery there. But we were totally isolated, and there were a lot of things that I did not know when I got to high school. And everybody, I think, who went to St. Jake's did the same thing. When we were in school and doing classwork, at the top of the paper, we always wrote AJPM. I will say it in French. À Jésus par Marie. To God from Mary, his mother. We got into high school and they were ready for us. They told us, don't put those things on your paper. So that was when I started to learn that St. Jake's wasn't the whole world. Finished there and went to BU. And I stayed there for 2 years and decided that was not where I wanted to go. I was there for therapy, not physical therapy.
Mm.
And I didn't want to do it. So I came home and went to, where'd I go? Stonehill.
Stonehill.
And that was it. And then while I was just finishing Stonehill, I met this strange Irishman. And we hooked up, and he told you the rest. Anything else? We didn't get very far.
Well, no, thank you for that. That's wonderful stories.
And when I went to school at St. Jake's, we went to the cellar of the church.
See,
And somewhere along there, what?
let me tell you the reason the church was in the cellar. The church had to get money from the parishioners to build the church. And so once they got the cellar done, they didn't have enough money to build the rest. So they turned the cellar into a church until they got enough money to work their way up in the world. You know?
And you just reminded me of something I thought of. When we were in school, we'd get these little cardboard rectangles, and there would be something outlined like 5. And you would get that, or life, or love, some kind of crazy word. And your job that month was to tape a nickel. They had little dots on it. Tape a nickel on each dot and pass it in at the end of the month. And that was your donation. Not it doesn't pay for your schooling. That was a separate thing, but to get money. And they promised that they would never go into debt, and they never did, to build anything. So that was why the basement was. So then we got ready, and we were ready to start the construction. And the Immaculate Conception Church had a rather large fire. So they had to break it up completely. And the cardinal at that time, an Irishman, went to the St. Jake's bank account and emptied it and gave it to the Irish, which was a wonderful thing. They needed a church. That was our church. So from that time on, the French and the Irish down there just don't get along. I don't know how it is in any other country or any other city or any other state, but down in Whittington, that didn't go. So every time we were walking home, and we walked back and forth 4 times a day, we had to go by that place. And couldn't talk to anybody. We had to cross.
But I mean, Meme, you are French, and Pepe, you are Irish.
Yeah.
So, how did that?
It's a wonder we're together this long, isn't it?
I looked up my mother's generation. I have a lot of history here and timelines for the families. And I got to like my mother's generation, and all there are, French married French, French married French, French. And there was no mixing. And I remember my mother and father, when their brothers and sisters would get together, they always spoke French. And they had an awful way of saying one word, Irishman. And Irlandais, it was like you could hear the poison coming out. And that's the way it was.
That's right.
That's the way it was. And when my brother, he was the first one, got married an Irishman or Irish woman, it was like a mixed marriage. It was like horrified. And when we got together as families, those little French people would just yak and yak and yak and yak how awful it is that they had to go out of their kind.
Yeah, it's
and
like
marry. And then when we got married, right after, they went into panic.
Like my father's name, obviously, your great grandfather, I guess, was Scully. He married a woman called Catherine O'Connell, Irish. One of my very best friends, and this is not unusual, named Billy Gallagher. I went to Marine Corps with him. His mother's maiden name was Cochran. So like Meme said, it would, if you moved out of and just an interesting thing also, you probably know, but Meme's brother, Paul, married Mary Scully. So Levesque married a Scully. In this situation, Scully married.
It was almost like it was a sinful thing. Yeah.
Anyway.
But they get used to it.
Do you have any like a message that you want to share with the students at Taunton High School who would be viewing this for Passport to Culture? Do you have anything you want to share?
Yes, I'm very proud of this year's graduating class at Taunton High School, including yourself. I read about all their accomplishments in a lot of things. And it was brought to my attention, even this year's basketball team. The other night, they beat the Mansfield, which is the state champions. So, and all I can wish them an awful lot of success. And they got a lot of talent, obviously, at least in that class going forward. And all they do is pay less attention to the agony that's going on around us, because things always get better.
I'd like to say, as a former graduate and teacher at Taunton High School, don't pay any attention to what other people say about Taunton High School. I know how great it is. You're accomplished physically, you're accomplished mentally. You do, for the most part, you do what you're supposed to do, and everybody seems to enjoy it, but everybody wants to knock our school in Taunton, and I resent that because I know what you got. Keep it up.
Well, thank you very much. It's been great to talk with you. I've really enjoyed sitting down with you and discussing these things. So thank you for joining me, and I think that's all I have.
Can we do this again after all this is all done?
We'll have to. I mean,